Today's episode of Northern Lights is presented by North Star Law Group, a trusted partner for small businesses in Minnesota's legal cannabis industry. Whether you've already applied for a license or just getting started, attorney Jen Riza and her team can help you build a compliant business, identify and navigate risks, put together an application, and keep you informed about the ever-changing Minnesota cannabis landscape. Are you ready to add North Star to your team? Visit northstarlaw.com/cannabis and let North Star Law Group guide you through confidently opening your doors. Again, that's northstarlaw.com/cannabis. And we're back. Welcome to another episode of Northern Lights. I'm your host, Tanner, joined today by the Doobie Dabbler team, the Dabbler Depot team, Cayle and Sam. Welcome, guys. Happy to have you here.
What's up? How are we doing?
Good to be here.
Doing well. Happy to be here at the Seed and Sesh here in the studio. Excited to talk through some news today and just sort of chat about cannabis events generally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet.
So, Cayle, you've been on the show before. So people that watched last season, you probably have heard of Cayle. We talk about Cayle a decent amount. And Sam, we've known you for a while, but you just haven't been on the show yet.
This is my first time. I've been a listener and I've been around, but, it's really awesome to be here to just talk about stuff and introduce myself and be a part of this.
Yeah, the number of times that you were probably like 10 feet from our recording, because you would be over in the coffee shop. We would be just down the hall in the recording studio. It's like your Northern Lights family. So we're happy to have you.
I'm adjacent. I'm an ally for sure.
Exactly. But one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on is because you are sort of the events guy around here. You're the person who helps to coordinate a lot of, I'll let you tell me a little bit about what you do around here.
Yeah, so I'm the events director for the Beer Dabbler, and with that comes, just the fact that, we put on the Doobie Dabbler. So I was one of the lead events coordinators with a full team in partnership with other brands to kind of put this thing on. So if we also do small-time retail events, like I have one tomorrow for a clothing drive and things like that, and those are things I organize around just around our retail areas. And then, I put on the Pride Dabbler, and I put on the Winter Dabbler as well, and now the Doobie Dabbler.
Awesome. I dig it. Yeah. The Dabbler event series is one that I think is so well known here in the city. So I was so excited when you guys started to navigate into that cannabis space. I'll be honest. People know I'm not a huge beer drinker, but I went to the last Beer Dabbler and I had way too much fun.
Oh, were you at the Pride Dabbler?
So I missed the Pride Dabbler, but I went to the one at the State Fair. The
Winter
Beer Dabbler.
one.
Yeah.
Dabbler.
And so I had a great time, walked around, tried so many ciders, and went home and had this experience like sitting on my kitchen floor and being like, oh, this is what fun is. And
you got dabbled out.
Yeah, exactly. But didn't really have that experience with the Doobie Dabbler. Did perhaps some very large sized dabs and consumed a lot of samples.
Yeah.
It was a fun time.
Yeah, glad to hear. Yeah, Doobie Dabbler is like the biggest project I think I've ever done in my entire life, and I'm pretty sure it's the biggest in like Dabbler events. Like I don't think we've ever done multiple day events before that I've been told about.
We've tried to do stuff like that in the past, and it really didn't make it out of like the concept period. Like we definitely tried to do like a back-to-back thing, but it honestly, like 2 days is just a lot usually for a small team, but this one was awesome.
Yeah, this one, it was a cannabis festival, and it's the first one that our company has done, but it had our Dabbler flair added onto it. Dabbler is well known for having super weird things going on with it. The wackier, the better, a kind of like freak show, so to speak, going on. So yeah, we were happy to have cannabis as the focal point and then kind of zhuzh it up with the kind of Dabbler aesthetic that we're known for.
I love that. And I love the freak show way of describing it, because you were like walking by wrestling and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's motocross over here. I saw Clem cooking up some edibles and then a burlesque show on the same stage like an hour later. And it's really such a like unique doesn't begin to describe it. It's Dabbler only. Like it's only something, an event that you guys could throw on.
Yeah, it's funny in the event planning process, like someone will go, oh, like let's have burlesque dancers. And the kind of conversation is just, oh yeah, well, why not? And it's like, all right, well, but if you bring it up, it's like, well, now you got to go pull that thread, figure out the feasibility of it, bring it back to us, and just talk about like this is what it's going to look like. I'm thinking this showtime. I have this quote from these artists. And then we as a team go, all right, yeah, sounds good. Make it happen. You know, for me, I was in charge of a large part with the music booking and the talent acquisition. I worked with Jordan on that. And, you know, it is just kind of like, well, we want to do this many bands and we want to do this. And, you know, our leadership is like, all right, go, figure it out. Have fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What were some of the big differences that you guys noticed between like an alcohol forward event that you guys are really well known for and then more of like a cannabis oriented event? Like, do you try to appeal to a different clientele? Do you plan different activities at it? Sort of what is the mindset between that?
So I think with an alcohol forward event, I mean, in both situations, like your transportation, like first and foremost, like thinking about just organizationally, I mean, like transportation has historically always been a big thing with the Dabbler, making sure people can go from one spot to another safely. But there's like another level of risk and the unknown of having that many people in one place consuming. And, you know, the Seavers Farm too had bars that they normally activate for their Seavers Family Festival. And so that was something that, you know, in the early process, we were really trying to figure out, you know, are people going to consume both? Are people going to want to consume both? Like, surely they're going to. And so, like, from a risk perspective, that was definitely something that we looked at. And we honestly were really happy. Like, you know, I've gone to a lot of festivals where it's very obvious that people are consuming cannabis, among other things, and still consuming alcohol.
For sure.
And, I mean, people are fine as long as you've got the medical teams and things like that available. I'd say from an activities perspective, you can incorporate a lot more things from someone's childhood. I think when people are drinking and with an alcohol-forward event, it's like, let's have more games, let's have more engaging activities, things that people can do together. Like, I know from our booth, our Seed and Sesh booth at Pride, we had like a big Plinko board. And that drew a lot of people. Like, we were in the middle of the baseball field, effectively. We didn't have our own tent just because we had to have shade for a DJ booth here and a DJ booth there. And so we have this giant Plinko board, and we're all just standing out in the middle of the spot. And I thought it was going to be hard enough where I could just go, hey, guys, yeah, if you sink the ball, you get a seed. And suddenly everybody took all of our seeds.
Yep.
But you could hear cheers throughout the entire place when somebody would make it or someone would get just too close and then they'd fail. And so, you know, activities for a cannabis event, it's like, you know, we also leaned really heavily into our vendors because our vendors have gone to a lot of cannabis events. And they've been a part of legacy, and they've done creative things in the past. And so, like, we really, in the early stages of things, we really talked to a lot of vendors at events. I know Sergio did, and I did here as well, is just, like, figuring out how can we feature your brand in a way that is important to you, but also engages the consumer. And it's like, you got a game. Like, Raiden Labs did a Sync 1, Win 1.
Yeah,
like,
for sure. I saw that.
I know, like, we had Lit Pinball. They just brought pinball machines. It's like, that's cool. Everyone likes to play pinball. I don't think, you know. But, like, you know, Seavers also, with the infrastructure that was there, having, you know, mazes and pumpkin blasters. Like, I like to blow stuff up. So the pumpkin blasters were pretty cool. And they just have a lot of kids stuff, but, you know, if you keep the kids out and the adults don't now feel weird, you know, going and interacting with all the stuff, like, you know, if you have a grown man on a tire swing, like, that's pretty fun. Yeah. So, and so I think, you know, there's always it always intertwines, you know, between both sides of the events. It's just awesome that, you know, we can't do things that we can do at Seavers at the state fairgrounds or, you know, in a public park in Minneapolis. So that allowed us to get a little more creative with, you know, how we, you know, move forward with events and move forward with activities and, you know, what's possible with next year. So
I take it, man. Yeah, I've long been an advocate that the Minnesota cannabis culture is unique in of itself, that there's like this Midwest culture that's being developed, but that here in Minnesota, we really have this long history of using cannabis for many things, and our culture has been built around it, even if a little bit more subtly. But it's really cool to see this Minnesota cannabis event culture being developed. Like I remember going to it was actually one of the Legacy Cups like 3 years ago, and there's a couple hundred people there. It was cool to see so many people turn out for a cannabis event. But now like standing at the Doobie Dabbler and like looking around and being like, wow, there are more people in my eyesight right now than there were at probably like the first 3 or 4 Legacy Cups combined. Like we're getting to the point where these events are getting massive and the culture around them is really starting to develop, and it's cool. Thank you guys for being part of that and really defining what does it mean to have fun in public around cannabis in Minnesota. I had a great time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, shout out to the Seavers team for allowing us to party at their place.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, we couldn't, everybody, the thing about throwing a party is you got to have a space that's conducive to it, and then you got to have municipalities and stuff that are also cool with it. So, being able to party at Seavers Farm was, kind of a dream come true for us, because it's like we could throw a block party or something like that, and it would be really fun. But you just can't get away with as much as you can on private property.
Yeah, private property helps a lot. I mean, just with the way that the cities kind of look at cannabis, I would love to have sampling at my beer dabblers, but there's a kind of like there's an insurance issue about that. There's just a city law issue about that, and so like I'd want to get these cannabis brands involved. And in a lot of ways, like I spend so much time speaking with breweries, other alcohol forward vendors, and then I started making my way into the cannabis world, and I want to get these vendors that I'm building relationships with involved, but I can't. So putting it on private property, having it cannabis focused is like a really big win for a lot of the relationships we've built. Yeah. As far as like the culture aspect, I mean, events are fun, vendors are necessary, but I think, I come from a place that I don't come from the Twin Cities. And so when I moved here and I saw how many events were just going on, I was like, dang, this area loves throwing the parties, having a cultural atmosphere, getting people gathered together under one idea together to do a thing. Events are changing in a lot of ways that it just can't be vendors anymore. Vendors at 10 by 10 booths aren't going to cut it anymore. And not to say that vendors are bad. And like I go up and I speak with vendors when I go to events in my personal free time. But like if I do a lap and I've spoken to every vendor at whatever event I'm going to, like I'm going to start wanting to look for things to do, and I'm going to want to do that. And so with the Doobie Dabbler, we had the privilege of just having a team that has wild ideas. Like going like, well, obviously the dirt bikes are going to jump when the wrestler guy suplex this guy. Like, why wouldn't it happen that way? But it's not just vendors, but people come out, they do this thing, then they go to a vendor and they're feeling good. And then it's good relationship building for our vendors. And so, that was really important to us. And, events are going to have to change that way. And events are new for the cannabis industry as things open up for them. So,
so we try to break news here on the podcast as much as we possibly can. Can we expect another cannabis event in the Dabbler team history? Are we willing to talk about it? We can cut this if not, but.
There's conversation.
We're definitely, I think we're gonna have to do it again.
We're gonna have to. Obviously, that iron's gonna get put back in the forge, and we're gonna refine it in a lot of ways, and we're excited to do so. But we can. You guys can expect another cannabis event from us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last year we did just a Halloween parking lot party at 7th.
Yeah,
that was really fun.
Time.
So we're looking to do something creative this fall too, like maybe not on a large scale, but now with Seed and Sesh, available to be activated, this fall, which is super dope. And then we also have West 7th, which is still humming. And we have the coffee there, and we also have a larger parking lot that, we can fence off and rock and roll like we did last year. So, we've talked about a winter carnival in the past. We've talked about a pool party in the parking lot. I mean, it's getting a little cool for that, but we have, there's a lot of opportunities just even locally, but I think if Sam's still got it in him.
I mean, I have some ideas about stuff. I'm interested to see where festival culture goes.
For sure.
For cannabis, when craft beer really took like a big kind of like charge, and people were, IPAs became cool again, and all of a sudden macro had to contend with micro brewing processes. Sampling events became a big thing, and a lot of them came out, and I anticipate something really, really, really similar happening with cannabis. And like I would just say to like any brands who are interested in just becoming recognizable in the culture, you're gonna have to partake in events in some capacity, whether it just be a 10 by 10, or you're going to have to put on smaller scale stuff if you have a retail space. Not everyone has a retail space, which is why it's important to work with your local community. You know, in a lot of ways, events, and we talk about them as like this kind of business, like very practical way, but these festivals, these gatherings are a place to build a culture, and a culture starts the conversation. If you want to be in that conversation, be there at that gathering. You know, it's exciting. I'm ready to see what's going to happen. You know, I'm happy that Doobie made a kind of strong argument for the definition of what cannabis culture is going to look like in the Twin Cities area and in Minnesota generally for a little bit. And I'm excited to see how that changes things. I'm excited to see other cannabis events come up and, you know, do wild and wacky things. That way I can go, oh, that was such a good idea. Like, why didn't I think of that, you know?
Well, keep it up. I think I've been to every cannabis event that you guys have hosted thus far. I've been to the Halloween parking lot. I got to be at the Doobie. And I think like we were talking about earlier, that Dabbler culture, the essence of what those events are applied to cannabis is it's a fucking fun time. That's for sure.
It's a good time.
So tell me a little bit more. You were talking about those activations here at the Seed and Sesh. I remember being here like 420 weekend, seeing tables all around here filled with people. What kind of events do you guys host here?
Yeah, so you know, historically we've done classes. We do our Tuesday night homegrown meetups, which have, you know, consistently started to get bigger and bigger, and we've got a good group of community that's really forming here. We've had burlesque shows here.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
It was really awesome, actually. I was a little nervous, and then then it was a lot of fun.
It kicked butt. It was super sick.
People were super jazzed about it. You know, I've even shut down Seed and Sesh for a bachelor party, like a 420 friendly bachelor party, and basically got to, you know, kind of guide these guys through different forms of consumption, and we got to get out the volcano. So yeah, that was really fun. But right now what we're looking to do is we're looking to have more vendors coming in. You know, people with products, people with something to show. Whether that's Tuesday night, like Tuesday night might get bogged down. It's a great night for people to just kind of come out and do stuff, but having more vendors coming out with, you know, their products and showing exactly how they work, and, you know, maybe being able to jump here in the studio, turn some cameras on and get a quick shot of them. And then we can speak to it a little bit more, because like as a retail shop, it's great to just have product on shelves, but when you can get the guy or even one of the sales guys or one of the experts in here to record content and also, you know, teach people, I think, you know, it'd get me out of my house to go and see how something works. Also, we're looking to do more, you know, more classes, more educational content, more hands-on stuff. So we've done some free educational courses here. And we're looking to do more paid stuff as well, where people can leave with a little bit more than, you know, maybe a seed or something like that.
Cool, man. Yeah, no, I think that really sounds like a fun time. Like every time that I come here to the Seed and Sesh, I have a great time. It's cool coming and hanging out here, and it's a cool place for hosting events. That's for sure. Yeah.
I mean, also we're looking at getting open decks in here. You know, we at the Doobie Dabbler, believe it or not, like you know, the stage in the back had a lot of some electronic music going on back there, and we've had interest in, you know, turning on the sound reactive lights in here and dimming the lights a little bit and letting the place flash. And so I kind of want to open it up. We could have a small little silent disco or something like that if the cops get mad, but you know, we're on Payne Avenue, like, you know, people are cool with it. I know Cadence has little concerts down there. So I'd like to do some music here. I'd like to do more burlesque, you know, if we can get the people out here, we'd love to do it. We'll probably have to block out the windows a little bit better next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's a lot of different ideas that we have, you know, moving into the winter, you know, as events start to wind down outdoors, you know, being able to utilize the space better for people to just, you know, have a good time or rent it out to have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, there's just another conversation. I mean, we do the winter beer dabbler, and it's notorious for being cold to the point where tap lines freeze outside. You're duct taping like hand warmers to them to try and thaw the beer for these people who want to sample. I mean, that's another conversation. You know, we do live in Minnesota, and it does get cold. And, you know, a bigger conversation is just being like, all right, how does cannabis handle that? You know, how does, you know, what are we going to do if we want to do events? Cool. What event spaces are open to us? What avenues? Are we going to do a winter Doobie Dabbler? Like, what does that look like? You know, is there going to be a snowman one day with a doobie in his mouth? You know, kind of just seeing. I mean, people show up for it. It's wild, you know, and I think it speaks to just Minnesotans in general, what they're interested in, and, you know, being proud of where they're from. I think that culture is really what's going to drive the desire to come to these events.
I like it, man. I think both of you guys have a really unique perspective on this industry, coming at it from the event side, coming at it from the retail side, coming at it from the cannabis side. I think it's, like I said, you guys put on cool events.
Yeah, we're excited.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, well, we're going to take a short break here. When we come back, we got an interview with Matt DeLong from the StarTribune. But, guys, before we go, I do have to ask you one quick question.
Oh, yeah?
So we're taking a break from the news this week, but we had a poll come out from NPR, StarTribune, and Care 11.
Okay.
If you had to guess, what percentage of Minnesotans reported consuming cannabis? This poll just came out a couple days ago. This includes both cannabis and hemp-derived THC products.
You're going to have a better guess than I am for sure, Cayle.
I would say about 40%.
What do you think your guess is?
Man, I have no idea. Wow. I'm going to go with...
Maybe it's less. I don't know.
Honestly, I think it's going to be more. I'm thinking 52. Let's do that. That feels good.
So I have to say, I was personally shocked by these numbers. And we'll be sharing them right after a break. No, I'm just kidding. No, 14%.
Oh, wow.
Only
we were so
14% reported. I think 30% of Minnesotans are lying. So
30%.
only one in
I thought
five.
it was way more. Like,
Absolutely.
It just seems so, like...
I guess I can understand that. I think it's probably, real numbers were probably closer to 20, but...
I think even higher. But we'll be breaking down the rest of those results, looking at the difference between party and age and whereabout in Minnesota, because some of those numbers might surprise you. So tune in next week. But for now, we're going to cut to that interview with Matt DeLong. So we'll be right back. Ready to kick off your home grow? We've got the perfect hookup for you. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. They've got everything from fast flowering strains to unique hybrids, all ready for growing in Minnesota. And guess what? Our listeners get an exclusive deal. Use the code NL10 for a 10% discount on your entire order. Don't miss out and get started with the best seeds. Start your growth strong with MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Remember, NL10 for 10% off at MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Grab your seeds today. I just wish there was some way that I could tell people that I lived in Minnesota, that I liked cannabis, and that I was a listener of the Northern Lights podcast. There is! Northern Lights merch! Dope! You can get yours today! mncannabiscollege.org/Northern Lights. Get your shirts, get your mugs, check it out. Get it all today. And we're back. I'm really excited to be sitting here in the studio with the editor of Nuggets, the StarTribune's free weekly newsletter, Matt DeLong. Matt, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be talking to you a little bit more about the coverage of cannabis here in Minnesota and nationally. But before we talk about that, I want to just get a little bit of background on you. So you aren't from Minnesota originally.
I'm not, no.
In fact, you actually have a background not in writing specifically about cannabis, but you are a Pulitzer Prize winner that you covered the 2014 NSA surveillance program. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say that I am a Pulitzer Prize winner. I was part of a team that won a Pulitzer Prize, and there were about 30 people on that team. But I did work very closely with all the reporters on almost all of the stories that the Washington Post did in 2013, 2014 on the Edward Snowden leaks and the National Security Agency and all that stuff. So I was very involved in all that.
Yeah, so it's really cool having you in because we talk to people that I think are like, oh, they're big in the Minnesota cannabis industry. It's cool to talk to Anthony or whoever, but like it's really cool to talk to someone that has a really unique background on journalism nationally. Can you tell us a little bit more about what kind of stuff you were doing for the Washington Post?
Yeah, so I was my title was National Digital Projects Editor. So I was on the national desk working on a lot of the coverage of national politics, national security. If there were disasters or big stories that bubbled up like anywhere in the country, and we sent reporters, I might be involved in the on the enterprise reporting, which is like big, like reported pieces that we put a lot of resources into. I worked a lot on the digital presentation for those things. So for the NSA stuff, I was very involved in the presentation of the documents themselves. We had the reporters annotate them. We built a template for annotating them, and that was something I focused on in particular on that project.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So what motivated you to come to Minnesota and start working for the StarTribune?
Yeah. So, I mean, I spent about 6 years in D.C., and my career there was great. My personal life and social life was, I was very much like working all the time, and and DC, the cost of living is extremely high, and I felt like I was spending all my money just living in DC and not really all my friends were people I worked with, and it wasn't the way I wanted to live. And I was looking for a change, and the StarTribune had a very interesting and fairly vague job posting that looked like it was kind of up my alley, and I applied. And I had been to Minnesota a few times, and I had friends here, and I always had a good time when I came here. So I was offered the job, and I decided to move.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what kind of stuff did you start doing at the StarTribune? The first article that I found that you covered about cannabis was back in 2015.
Yes.
You covered all the graphical side of that, right? It was looking at charting what cannabis looked like in Minnesota.
Yeah. So the first thing we ever did after I came aboard at the end of 2014 was that it was like 9 charts that explained the state of cannabis in Minnesota. And I worked with our one of our data editors, Jeff Hargarten, on that. And that was kind of a first stab at something. I mean, it was something that both Jeff and I were interested in, and we hadn't really done anything since a lot of states were starting to legalize. And we thought, it's a matter of when, not if, it's going to happen here. Sure. And maybe that was our first stab at like planting a flag, and that we were going to try to cover this. There wasn't a lot happening in Minnesota at the time. Mark Dayton was the governor, and he was not a supporter of legalizing cannabis. So it wasn't really going anywhere. But, it was something we were interested in. We decided to take a crack at it.
It's really cool. The StarTribune has a long history of polling Minnesotans about legalization. Yeah. You can go back to like the mid 70s and see 12% support for like not long-term incarceration. And there's been a huge shift in how Minnesotans view cannabis.
Right.
Because I'm curious to hear a little bit about that transition from covering the early days of the medical program. It had just passed. We had very few patients starting to enroll, but it was starting to roll out to now today, where we have adult use legalization, we have licensure sort of in the process. But it's looking like we're going to have our full-blown industry within the next year. What has that transition, especially from that reporter perspective, sort of been like?
Yeah, when I came aboard, I think the last time we asked about, support for legalizing cannabis in Minnesota, it was maybe 2014. It was something like 30% of people said they supported it, which is surprisingly low. I thought for, Minnesota's reputation as a blue state, like it would be a little different, but there is kind of like this history of like paternalism, and paternal liberalism or something that comes from like Scandinavia, the history of the people, where, maybe, that helps explain why the support was so low. But then, I kind of advocated for a while that we should ask the marijuana question again. I think we ultimately did maybe in 2019, and it was like 52% the next time. So it was very interesting. I think it kind of paralleled like the change in public opinion over gay marriage, same-sex marriage, in that it was a very rapid change. And I think, it shows like, younger people coming of age, maybe like, the silent generation kind of fading in the back that like came up with like, the war on drugs and all that. And, obviously like the baby boomers have a different experience with cannabis than like their predecessors.
Very much so.
And so I think as generations get older and, new ones kind of take over the scene, like public opinion can change very rapidly when that happens.
Yeah, it was really interesting digging into the crosstabs of that poll that you guys just released that looked at what cannabis consumers looked like in Minnesota. And the age discrepancies were like really dramatic.
Yeah.
Looking at people in that highest age group that really a low number reported consuming cannabis. So like the lowest age group where it was like recently high.
Yeah, I mean, I expected it to be a bit higher than it was. I mean, this is a sample of people across the state. It's 800 people. You know, I think it was like 11% of people in the 50 plus, which is a very broad demographic. Said that they have consumed in the last month, and I think it was 18% in the under 50. But we just thought it would be interesting to see, how many people are at least, in an interview willing to say, and there were quite a few people that did not respond to that question. So I would, I'm not going to speculate on what their actual usage is like, but that number could be higher. I would think.
It's, the whole, as it becomes more accepted, I think we'll see those numbers continue to rise. A, because there are probably going to be more people as access increases that are trying it. But B, I think that are just more willing to publicly admit, I'm a cannabis consumer, even to a pollster, which I get is not like admitting it to their family, but still.
Right.
So you talked a little bit about being at the StarTribune, asking for more polling around that cannabis generally. Can you talk about what the conversation at the StarTribune has been around cannabis? I mean, you guys are sort of the leading coverage on Minnesota cannabis with your newsletter. It's sort of what has acceptance around cannabis been easy at the StarTribune? Yeah,
I mean, I think, and I would say we're not necessarily, just the only media organization leading on this. I mean, we see it as an opportunity for us to maybe develop an audience that may be a little younger than our typical audience. MinPost, Peter Callahan doing amazing work and vital work. And
the MinPot,
absolutely. So I think other news organizations are doing a great job. We're doing our best, and obviously the newsletter is planting a flag and committing to ongoing coverage. But I think early on, there wasn't a lot going on. So there wasn't a huge reason for us to be, making a big push on cannabis. As it became more clear that, there's bills being introduced, even if, they're not going anywhere, there's momentum building. And I was kind of making the case, 2 or 3 years ago. I think the real crystallizing moment for me, I think I was in Denver for a conference maybe in 2015. It was the first time I was in Colorado after legalization. And I was thumbing through the Denver Westward, which is their city pages, peace be upon it. Yeah. But I was flipping through it, and it was just wall to wall cannabis ads and full color pages. Those are expensive to print. So they're actually, making some money and spending money on their product here. And it just kind of light bulb went off. I was like, oh, legal cannabis is going to save journalism, kind of facetiously, but also, clearly there's a lot of companies when a huge $1 billion industry springs up overnight, there's a lot of companies that emerge with an advertising budget. And so that just kind of got my gears turning in my head. And, I pitched a newsletter to kind of as a way of dipping a toe into the coverage, probably 2.5, 3 years ago. Maybe more than that, actually. But the momentum wasn't really there yet. The bills weren't advancing. But then as, in the last couple sessions, obviously things started happening very quickly. And it became clear that this was happening. Yeah. And kind of at the same time, we had a transition in leadership. Our publisher retired, our executive editor, moved on to a different publication. So we had new leadership that was kind of, looking for ways to expand an audience. And I had been, pitching this newsletter as a way to kind of, try to build an audience around this topic that is maybe, a little, like I said, a little bit younger than our typical, subscribers, both in print and digital. They skew on the older side, to put it,
Yeah, put it lightly.
diplomatically.
For sure, yeah, absolutely.
So, maybe this is an opportunity to try to like introduce our brand to people who we don't currently have any kind of relationship with. And on top of that, like as a new industry comes online, perhaps down the line there could be some advertising opportunities for us. Right now we don't have that opportunity, not with marijuana at least.
Yeah.
With hemp, I think we're starting to accept some hemp ads in the newsletter. But that's all, up to our marketing department and whatnot. I just work on the content.
But I think it's really cool. Like, it's been really neat seeing Minnesota create this Minnesota model, as we've been calling it, and sort of the rest of the country looking in and seeing, how is this going to work? I personally think it's going to work out great, but I guess we'll see in a couple of months, in a year, in a few years. And I think the StarTribune, the MinnPost, NPR, the reporters here in the state have really been doing an important job of doing on-the-ground reporting of what our industry looks like and sharing it out with the rest of the country. I remember there being a time when THC beverages was something that was so ubiquitous here, but you'd go to other states and they wouldn't really know about it. Obviously, we're past that now. The cat's out of the bag.
Right.
But I think we have a cool model to how cannabis can look, and I think the reporters really help to get out how that's working, good and bad.
Yeah, I mean, it is, a real innovation nationally. Like, Minnesota is, undergoing this, pretty major experiment with a fairly, open approach to, hemp-derived products while also legalizing marijuana. So it will be very interesting to see how it plays out. And that was part of my interest in this is, this is a kind of wild social experiment that's happening right now. And it's really interesting and fascinating, whether or not, you consume or don't consume, it's interesting to see what's going on. And I think having the opportunity to document that in real time is really exciting.
That's really cool. So you talked a little bit about consumption. That's something that I do want to touch on a little bit. I was an activist back in 2014 when, there wasn't a ton of activity happening around the state. Reporters were, I think, a little bit less connected to the cannabis culture. They definitely knew what was going on at the Capitol, but maybe not as much on the activism side. But we're getting to a new chapter where now that cannabis is legal, we have people from all walks of life that are talking about using cannabis and finding ways in their lives. I want to sort of ask you a little bit, as a reporter for the StarTribune covering cannabis, do you have a background in what cannabis is? Are you a consumer?
Yeah, I mean, I consume cannabis. And I have, for a long time. And, it's not something that I have ever viewed as a big deal. I mean, I tried it in high school and, like many, many millions of American youth. And, it's just something that's always kind of been around and, not been perceived as a very big deal. And it's always something I've enjoyed. And I'm interested in it just as a product and, how, people use it for so many different things. And, I don't think it's hard to remain, objective about it. I fully recognize that, there are things that, there are cautionary things that we need to pay attention to, driving while intoxicated and how legalization affects youth and whether, teenagers have more access to it. So I think that's an important thing to be paying attention to. There could be health risks associated with it as well. There would be smoking anything.
For sure.
So, I'm trying to stay, balanced with I'm not going to censor things that, don't agree with my worldview. I'm going to put it out there. And, I think my role is to gather information and, present it to people and they can do with it what they will, if people have their own opinions formed already, that's fine. But I just want people to be able to make educated choices.
I think that's cool. I think the StarTribune has long done really good reporting around cannabis. But if you go back to the 60s, the 70s of cannabis journalism, it was a lot of people that I think very respectfully, didn't know a ton about what they were writing about. They were covering a topic that there wasn't a ton of information around.
Sure.
And that's reflected a little bit in the articles that were written. It's really cool being in a day and age when reporters, I don't know how better to say this, but know what they're talking about in terms of cannabis. Yeah. And I think that really comes across in the reporting that we're getting out of Minnesota today.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, having familiarity with what you're writing about, I think, is important. I don't think, if you look at it from the perspective of, say I was, covering the beer industry and or reviewing beer, that kind of thing. Like, would it be scandalous for me to be somebody who drinks beer? Like, that would be absurd.
100%.
So I kind of view it in that same kind of way. If this is a legal product for adults to use, as long as you're, within the bounds of the law, I mean, I don't see it as a very big deal.
I 100%
for me
agree.
personally.
Yeah, no, and I think the comparison to alcohol is so apt where it would be weird to have a reporter covering the alcohol industry who's like, nah, but I don't really drink.
I mean,
that
you
stuff.
could, I'm not saying they can't do it,
for
but
sure,
I'm saying
yeah.
to say you can't do that, that doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I agree with that. So I want to ask you a little bit about sort of the upcoming months and year in Minnesota. Obviously, there's a lot of stories that are actively rolling and that you're having to keep your pulse on.
Sure.
What are some of the big ones that you're watching that people should maybe be keeping their eye on here in Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing that we'll be paying attention to is, when the bills were being written and negotiated, there was a lot of talk about creating, a Minnesota-centric craft cannabis industry. And now we have actually had a round of applications come in for the first social equity licenses. And something that I did not pay enough attention to, and this is kind of a mea culpa for me, is that, in early versions of the bills, like they had a residency requirement for applying, for any licenses, and that got taken out at some point. And there's a lot of legislation and changes that were made over the last few years, and that, like, I kind of had in my head that there was a residency requirement. But, I think we got so focused on what was in the bill, maybe we didn't pay enough attention to what wasn't in the bill. And, like, not everybody missed this. Like, Peter Callahan had reported this. But it didn't really register until, like, we saw the first, data about the social equity applicants come in, and more than half of them were from out of state. So that raises questions about, like, is it even possible to create this Minnesota craft industry when these licenses are going to be distributed by a lottery? So if there's 50+% of the applicants are from out of state, assuming they're qualified, there's going to be a lot of out of state companies coming in here. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I want to keep my focus mostly on the local companies to the extent I can. I'm sure there will be out of state companies that will be doing interesting and newsworthy things as well. But that's something I'll be keeping an eye on. The future of the hemp industry, when we have licenses being issued and this new legal marijuana industry in Minnesota comes online, that'll be really interesting to see what happens with hemp. Like, I think there will be obviously room for hemp beverages. Obviously they're in tap rooms and everything now on tap. But I think it will certainly probably affect the hemp industry, and will there be more regulation coming to the hemp industry? Whereas now it's a little bit treated like this lesser regulated, like, version of marijuana, and the distinction between hemp and marijuana is very blurry at times.
Very much so.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, will there be more regulation coming down the pike? My guess is there probably will be, but we'll see how that plays out. I think those are two of the really big things.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think Minnesota really is a good model of the country right now. We're really navigating with, like you said, what does that business rollout look like? What does that hemp versus adult use look like? And I think both of those things are going to continue to evolve both here in Minnesota and nationally over the next couple of years.
One other thing I would mention, though, is I think, like, a big part of my role and the role of the media in general here is, like, accountability and making sure that the products that are being sold are what they are purported to be. Are they getting tested the way they're supposed to be? I think right now there is not a ton of oversight happening in the hemp market, certainly, and the Office of Cannabis Management is still staffing up and all that. It'll be interesting to see how much oversight there is in the future. Are they going to be adequately equipped to regulate hundreds, thousands of businesses potentially? And from what I've seen already, I mean, there's a lot of really cool, interesting, smart people like working in this industry right now who want to make good products and are doing, innovative things. I've also seen clearly that there are some, maybe not bad actors, but questionable actors who are cutting some corners and doing things not totally according to the law. And, we'll see like how that plays out in the future, if there's, if they're going to be closing that gap or what.
Yeah, it was so interesting to see, like, and I know that THCA was never really allowed in Minnesota, but there was sort of that, like, gap in time where the OCM wasn't set up, they weren't regulating, and shops were widely carrying it. And there was some really interesting stories that you guys were writing about that, covering about, like, how does this industry look? It was a unique time having people that were operating cannabis stores fighting for more regulation, which I think might be a first in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely unusual. But yeah, I mean, the whole THCA thing, which, I assume your viewers are familiar with. I mean, the view pretty broadly outside of maybe a handful of hemp activists is that this stuff is indistinguishable from marijuana. It is marijuana. It's just grown without a license, and which makes it, by definition, black market, being sold on the shelves, in some cases in licensed dispensaries in Minnesota.
Yeah, very much so. It'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve as more retail stores open up, as that access opens. We're in a time where we have pretty limited growers here in Minnesota, but I guess we'll see how that continues to change. A quick question for you. I think a long time people haven't really connected with the media in the cannabis industry. If you were an activist, you probably were reaching out to them. But if you were on that legacy market side, you weren't calling Matt DeLong to StarTribune to be like, hey, look at what I'm doing.
No.
How does our industry shift and evolve with media? Like, do you want people calling you saying, hey, I've got a brand new product? Or sort of what is that threshold for when people should be reaching out to really try to get that word out about stuff?
I mean, I would say yes, I want people to reach out to me with a caveat that, like, that does not guarantee coverage.
Okay,
I mean, I want good stories. I want, products that are cool and innovative. I want to hear about them, or people doing cool things, or people with good stories, background stories. That's the kind of stuff that interests me. I'm really interested, I think once we have businesses being licensed, I'm going to be looking for the ones that are really doing it right, doing it the right way, doing it by the book, doing all the things they're supposed to be doing, and making great products that people like. I mean, those are the kinds of things I'll be interested in, going forward. But I absolutely do want to hear from people, and I have an email address just for the Nuggets newsletter. It's nuggets@startribune.com. And I welcome people to reach out to me. Sometimes I get more email than I can respond to, and I might miss some, but I generally try to be responsive there. And I welcome people to send me stuff, even if I'm not going to write about it. It's good to make introductions to people, and like maybe sometime down the line we'll connect if we don't connect right away.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so we'll put that email down in the show notes. So definitely, if you've got something you're doing in the cannabis industry, reach out and let them know.
Yeah.
So before we go, I wanted to plug one more time this newsletter, because people know our episodes we record on Friday, and we record them Friday afternoons because we got to wait for that Nuggets newsletter to come out. It's so good seeing the stories that you cover, sharing, reporting by other organizations here in the state. How can people go and get signed up for that newsletter?
Okay, it's very easy. You just go to startribune.com/nuggets. And there's a sign-up form there, and you just put your email address in. We're asking that, if you're under 21, please don't subscribe. We want to, keep it mostly for the adults who are able to consume. I mean, the information, is coming from news articles for the most part. Those are freely available to anybody. StarTribune.com/nuggets is where you can subscribe.
I dig it. Well, I appreciate it. It's cool reading the news. It's cool seeing what events are coming up. You have some really great interviews and features in there. And sometimes you do some cool giveaways. So people should definitely sign up for that newsletter.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Matt, thanks so much for coming in today. It was so great chatting with you, hearing a little bit more about your background. And I look forward to more coverage around the cannabis industry.
All right. Thank you, Tanner. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks so much. We'll be right back. Ready to kick off your home grow? We've got the perfect hookup for you. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. They've got everything from fast flowering strains to unique hybrids, all ready for growing in Minnesota. And guess what? our listeners get an exclusive deal. Use the code NL10 for a 10% discount on your entire order. Don't miss out and get started with the best seeds. Start your growth strong with MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Remember, NL10 for 10% off at MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Grab your seeds today. Hey, Cayle.
Hey, what's going on, Tanner?
Nothing much. So we're here with Cayle from Seed and Sesh. Super excited to be chatting with you today. Cayle, I'm looking for something to do on Tuesday nights. Have any ideas for me?
Well, Tuesday nights on Payne Avenue are normally pretty quiet, but we do have home grower meetup nights on Tuesday nights. So, we have our little community of home growers out here, and when we opened the store, I realized there are a lot of people out here who have been growing a lot longer than me, and there's a lot of people who are looking to get into it, and so we wanted to just create a space where people could come and talk about their home grow and dispel some myths, and maybe I had people bring in compost for other folks, and
Cool.
It's a lot of fun. It's Tuesday nights, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Bring your own flower if you'd like. We encourage people to enjoy their flower and share their flower outside. But we always have events. We're looking to start getting some more classes rolling on Tuesday nights because people are looking to get just more information and more interactive stuff going on. So
Cool. So if I'm a grower, I should come on down to these events?
Oh, absolutely. Even if you're not a grower, but you're like curious about growing, or maybe somebody gave you a plant and it's in your window and you want to figure out how to not kill it. Maybe you don't really want to grow super big weed and you don't want to invest a bunch of money, but just the idea of it's really fun. I have folks who just like to make edibles, and they come down and they get to learn about how to make their edibles better and things like that. So it's turned into a really cool community. There's a lot of different folks that come out. So
And remind me, where can people find Seed and Sesh?
so you can find us on Instagram at DD, that's like Dabbler Depot, Seed and Sesh. Also, you can find us at ddseedandsesh.com. And you can just stop down by the shop. We're at 949 or 951 Payne Avenue. They're right next to each other. You can't miss us. We're right across the street from Brunson's.
Sounds like a fun time. You know where I'll be on Tuesday.
All right.
You should be there too.
Absolutely. We'll see you there.
And we're back. Cayle, Sam, I'm so excited to share with you a product that I tried for the first time last week that we're going to be trying here in studio.
Rock and roll.
Now, I've talked about canna butter for years. It's sort of been like that foundational part of making edibles is, well, step one, you infuse the weed into the butter, and then you make the edibles. That's sort of how people did it. And I was so excited to walk by a booth of Dope Roots, a really awesome brand started by Nakima Levy-Armstrong, a really cool civil rights activist here in the state, where she has cannabis-infused butter already pre-made.
Cool.
That's
Now,
awesome.
I walked up to the booth. She's like, do you want to try some butter? I'm like, oh, I came over for the cookies. But okay, yeah, sure, I guess I'll try some butter. They had these Hawaiian rolls. They put a little bit on the roll. I bit it, and I was like, holy shit. This is really, really good. So I got some, and we're gonna share it here in studio. So,
Cool.
Cayle, I'm excited to see what your reaction is when you bite into this.
Do I get any?
Yeah, I guess you can have some
Jordan,
too.
you can have some.
Yes. Yeah.
Our cheeky little producer.
Oh, Jordan, we're so happy to share this with you.
Ghost host.
Ghost Toast. There we go.
Ghost Toast.
So we'll talk a little bit about what this is. They have a chocolate one as well. This is just the original. One serving that's 5 milligrams is about a tablespoon. So I brought this in. We're not going to use it, but this is, if you wanted to dose it,
Yeah,
that's
eat
how
a
you do it.
tablespoon of
Yeah.
butter right now.
Yeah. We're going to start just by
I'll take the
eating
full
it.
scoop. I'll take the full scoop.
And
please.
you're just going to eat it plain first? So that's-
At first, yeah.
All right, perfect. No. But we'll put some on a bread here. But yeah, let's jump in. So this is ghee. So it is actually stable at room temperature. You don't have to keep it refrigerated. I have kept it refrigerated because I prefer it that way. But
Fair enough.
We're going to just break into this. Cayle, what was the first edible that you recall having?
Okay, so I was working at Crave in Woodbury.
Okay.
It was fresh out of high school. And I think
They were
I
making edibles at Crave? No. Just
yeah,
kidding.
yeah. No, restaurant culture. So I think I was just a host there at the time, and someone who I knew smoked quite a bit. I really didn't smoke much at the time, and she gave me a lemon poppy seed muffin that was probably made out of just some mix with infused oil of some kind. And I was driving home through some new construction, and I was really hungry because I hadn't eaten all day, and I was like, I'm gonna eat this thing. And rather than eating half, I ate the whole thing because it was good. It was just a lemon poppy seed muffin. I like lemon poppy seed muffins. And I got home, and about an hour later, I started to kick in. And about the 2-hour mark, I lost my phone. And it was just like on the floor in the middle of the room, like on a white carpet. But I literally walked like in circles, probably for like an hour, looking for this phone. And then I was watching videos about like why weed makes you feel the way you do, because I had never had like an edible before, but I was really, but like honestly it could have been like 50 milligrams, and like I like, but you know, when it's your first time, like you're not gonna know. And then I ended up passing out and waking up the next day feeling pretty refreshed. But yeah, that was my first like edible experience.
I take that. Yeah, it sounds like you had a pretty similar experience for me. I learned the term floored from an edible. I took an edible and I was floored because I was laughing so hard. I was laying on the floor and I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to get up right now. And I wish I could go back and figure out what was the dosage of that edible.
What was the dosage?
Who knows? But today we do know. So I've got a couple little like sandwiches prepared. You can either make your own if you'd like, or you can grab one of these. It's literally just butter and
a Hawaiian roll.
Bread. So Jordan, here, I can pass this over to you. I can pass this one over to you.
Sweet.
Make one live up here, but
I see, Tanner, floored to me was the first time I had an edible. I was the floor.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Me and the floor were indiscernible from each other. I felt the vibrations of the building. I was the building. It was just falling through time and space.
That's one of the questions I should have asked Matt DeLong is, what's the highest you've ever? No. All right, well, let's see. Let's jump in. Here we go.
Cheers.
Salud.
Cheers, boys. Oh, nice ASMR noises going on.
ASMR.
Yeah. Oh, no, I hate it. Stop.
Yeah.
Excellent creaminess. Very nice cream.
Yeah, rate the cream 1 to 10.
10 out of 10 wood cream.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 wood cream. Yeah, indeed.
This has been kept in the fridge, so it's probably a little thicker than it would be if you just like got it off the store shelf. But
yeah, that's badass.
I like this a lot. I've never had an edible that I was like, ooh, I can't eat it by itself, but man, I would definitely eat it with pretty much everything. This is one of those that I think very quickly I would realize, like, wow, it's half empty. I think I just had 25 milligrams of edibles.
Put that on your pancakes in the morning. Ooh, good rest of your day.
With some of that Dr. Dab's maple syrup on top. You're pretty good.
See, I also love Hawaiian rolls.
Yeah.
So much.
Yep.
What I love about this is I use this term, and it feels sort of like the wrong term, but it feels innovative to me. It is not innovative. It is weed and butter, and that is it. But something about it being unique to the Minnesota legal edible market, where I don't see other THC-infused butter on the shelf that tastes like this.
No. I'd say like something that was really cool. I don't know if it's even like compliant, but the buzz oils, those were super dope. You put it on your popcorn and get high and watch movies, and eat popcorn, get more high and watch movies.
It was like back to basics for edibles, but done very, very, very well.
Yeah, the Dope Roots Canna Butter.
Love
10
that.
out of 10.
Yeah. So you can use it in cooking if you want, or you can just put it on a piece of Hawaiian bread and walk away with a delicious
We're not
buttery
fancy
edible.
here.
No.
Hawaiian roll is the way to go.
Honestly, just scoop it out of the jar and throw it in the...
With your fingers,
like Vaseline.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a future segment we could have. Dope cooking with Dope Roots, where we come on in and make a bunch of food with THC-infused butter and Martha Stewart style, like pull out the pan of brownies. And be like, this is infused.
Just in time for Thanksgiving.
There we go.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so definitely recommend people check this out. Nikema makes some really cool products. She also have cookies that are infused with this. Like I mentioned, they've got that chocolate butter. They've got a couple other things, but man, I definitely recommend people check this out. I think it's pretty good.
Is that available online, or did you find it in a store?
I got this at actually at a festival.
Oh,
it
that's
was one
right.
of the booths.
Yeah.
But it is available online through their website. You can get it. I've seen it in a couple stores here in town. If you want to carry it at your local store, I know we have some people in the industry that listen. Reach out to Nikema. DopeRootsCanna.com. That's pretty good. We'll put it in the show notes. Wow.
Sweet.
Sweet.
All right, guys. Well, before we go this week, we've got a new segment that we're doing. This is the first for you guys. We are ending our show with a high note. Something that is sort of just a positive end to your week. Something that maybe you were thinking about while smoking. Something that maybe you just haven't been able to stop thinking about all the time. It's just constantly been there. Civ, please put weed into your game. No. Whatever be it. What are some of those things that you'd light up a joint, you'd pack a bowl, you'd hit the Puffco, and you'd turn to your friend and go, hey, man, have you heard about this?
Ooh.
Is there someone that wants to go first this week?
Yeah, so I got pretty high by myself. Yeah, I know. By myself. What is it, like 2 nights ago? Mm-hmm. And usually I'll just play like video games or guitar or just like go to sleep. But no, for some reason my brain was like, you need to write a D&D campaign about the Dabbler team, and you need to decide who everyone is and what their class and race structure is. And now I have a small campaign written out with everyone listed out with their classes, and we're the Guild of Festivals, and I'm very excited to probably never see this come to fruition in any way.
All right, so I need to know the nerdiness of this conversation where we can get to. Do you play D&D, or have you?
Oh, yeah.
Have you played D&D?
I've never played. I'm ancillarily aware.
We're going to fill you in. So there are some Dabbler Depot people that podcast listeners probably know pretty well, including, like, I want to hear more about, like, what were some of these characters that you created?
Yeah, I got a list.
All right, here we go.
Give me 1 second.
I'm stoked.
Hold on, it's in a group chat somewhere. Give me a second.
This is so good. So I started a virtual D&D campaign over, like, the pandemic back in 2020 that lasted for, like, 3 years.
Nice.
And when we got to the end, we were like, well, I guess we're now, like, meeting in person. This was just to, like, fill our time. I guess we can be done.
Yeah, we can use it.
Should we retire?
Yeah, we can start a new campaign. So tell me more about these characters.
So we're we're a festival guild. And like, I'm trying to figure out the city. It's going to be a Twin Cities spoof. It's not very creative. The only creative is turning the world as I see it into a fantasy world. So we'll start with, like, Kelly is a cleric changeling.
Okay. Yep.
And then Will, I have him as an Owlin bard.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Will is a bard for sure.
Yep.
Cayle, half elf rogue. All the
right,
way.
yeah.
Like, it's a little on the
Very
nose.
much, I can see that.
Addo, our marketing wizard, is a goblin monk. I checked with that. I was like, yo, if you saw yourself as a demon, and they're like, small goblin who hits people. And I was like, word.
Yeah, pretty much.
Staff.
There you go. Jordan, I have as a Goliath artificer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tanner,
I
I want to hear from you. What does that mean?
So I know Goliath because that's a pretty common race. We interacted that with my guild. It's giant. Like, you're looking at orc size, but even larger. They stand in a room, and, like, you look around and you're like, oh, there's Jordan up there.
Got it.
Yeah.
The class, though, that one I don't know as well. Tell me.
Artificer.
Yeah.
So it's like paladin is like wizard knight.
Yeah.
And then, like, what is it? Cleric is like wizard doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Artificer is wizard builder engineer.
Engineer.
Oh, that's
Yep.
spot on.
It's
like
that is spot on.
Engineer magic. So it's where science and magic kind of coalesce. So it gets into, like, the steampunk stuff, but flies drones and.
But that's so. I remember coming in the studio for the first time, and there's just, like, things mounted all around. It looks like they're just, like, floating.
Yeah, he's the tinkerer.
Yeah, the tinkerer.
Guys, you're gonna make me cry. That's so sweet. I feel seen today. I feel seen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's spot on.
For Liam, he's going to be a dragonborn druid.
Okay.
Okay.
I like that one.
Yeah.
That's really
It's
cool.
just, for some reason in my brain, like, a dragonborn is like a very, like, meditative, calming presence in any party that I've been in, and Liam very much serves that purpose in my life.
Yeah, he brings the fire to the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Edward is just, like, straight up, like, human fighter.
yeah, for sure.
You know?
Steady Eddie.
Yeah, Steady Eddie, like, I'm going to find a way to have his weapon be like a baseball bat in some way, like, because he loves baseball so much.
I hope he's listening to this right now.
Yeah, like,
Yep. Spot on.
well, this is like Eddie, I'm just like, that's a guy, like, that peg fits in a lot of holes. Like, you know, easier to go for. And so, like, human fighter, adaptable. You just need someone to hit something sometimes in your party.
And consistently outperforms like the rest of the class in terms of DPS and tanking and everything else. Human fighter.
Yeah, human fighter. And then me, I'm a tiefling warlock.
All right.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was, and like I drew out like there's like probably 6 pages of like backstory and everything. When I woke up, it's riddled with spelling mistakes. Like it's awful. My professors in college, if they read that, they'd be like, "You're better than this, dude." Yeah. But like I was super stoked about it.
Put it through AI at this point, and it'll correct.
ChatGPT, make this legible.
Yeah, make this better.
Can we expect a deck of playing cards coming out of these characters at some point?
You know,
I was gonna crank out some. I have a little trading card project, or at least collectible card project that I've been working on for seeds. But yeah, we could. I was thinking about doing it for like people in like the Minnesota cannabis industry, but I don't know if everybody would like. Love that, but it'd be kind of cool.
I have a lot of thoughts on who could be good characters for that.
Yeah.
Before we get in trouble, Tanner, what's your high note?
Oh, wow. Well, first off, before we move on, I think we should create this game, run it, record the whole thing, and have like a weekly series of the Dabbler Depot for an hour, just playing D&D. Maybe everyone has to like take a giant hit of something beforehand, and then it's just like, welcome to the world.
Yeah.
There's gonna be so many of us who are just going to like knuckle drag our way through like Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, we actually were looking at starting a board game night here at Seed and
Ooh,
Such.
all right.
So
Yeah,
like,
please.
I'd be there.
Yeah.
could work.
Reach
What's
out.
your high note?
All right, so my high note, I brought something for this week, so I'm gonna
Show and tell.
here and grab it.
tell.
Show and here
On a
show and tell high
podcast.
note. So I'm a big a loser for just like really good cannabis jar branding.
Yeah.
I like just a jar that has some pretty good oil in it that also has really, really good branding on it. And I brought this one in because I just have to show it off. So there's a couple things that stand out about it. First off, the brand is OGs. Like OG,
OGs.
but the Minnesota OGs. Very Midwestern. I love it. The cultivar, Interstate 95.
Ooh.
And what is the graphics on the side other than just like a Minnesota forest? Interstate 95. This super cool ass truck going down the interstate. And I gotta be honest, I bought it just because it was a cool jar. It's pretty good oil too. I'm not mad about it. But I really, my high note from this week is a call towards rosin makers, concentrate makers, branders, jars, whatever. I want to see cool Minnesota branded weed things. Make more. Send them to me. I want to see them. If you've got some cool jars, I wouldn't mind smoking the oil in it too. But also, I just want to see really cool branding. So I saw this. I was like, well, I gotta show it off. It's an OGs. OGs. So that's my high note. Just like
OGs.
make more Minnesota weed stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I love it.
Kayle, what are you smoking on this week? What have you been thinking about?
So I've been thinking about a unresolved idea that Sam had for Doobie Dabbler. But I've just been we wanted to do. I think Liam at one point had said that we should do a cannabis industry dodgeball tournament, and I was like, that'd be super dope. Like you just get like your champions, but also getting like fielding a dodgeball team for an entire team for a night means that a lot of places are understaffed, and if the entire cannabis industry is playing dodgeball, that couldn't happen. So we're like, well, what could we get high and do? And then Sam was like, what about a spelling bee? And
I forgot I said that.
I have not been able to get it out of my head. And we have like a giant trophy, and people just get higher and higher and have to spell words. And like words like soldier, where you have like, silent letters.
Oh my gosh.
And because then you don't have to field like an entire team, but you could like pick your like spelling bee champion. And yeah, we wanted to like maybe record it, but it's just something
needs to be
I
recorded.
frequently think about it, and I'm like, I still want to do the industry spelling bee.
Wow.
That was like my most like
That was
just,
in, like,
caveman
November.
logic. Get high spell words. You know, like
But that's so. Oh, I would love to watch that.
No,
Now,
Tanner, you need to moderate it.
as long as I'm not competing, I am notoriously a bad speller, so I would get out round 2, if not round 1. But
Yeah.
it would be interesting to see like what people in the industry could stick around.
well, it wouldn't even have to be hard words. It could just be funny words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like get someone high enough go spell moist.
Because maybe that could be the other thing. It's like if you laugh too much,
Yeah.
you're out. You got to be serious about it.
Yeah,
This-
yeah.
this
You,
is
you
the-
get 3 laughs, 3 giggles.
Cayle, spell kumquat. Wow. All right. Yeah, I'd watch that.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
go the other direction and be like, spell like
Yeah.
whatever. Like,
Oh, just all weed words. It's like you say THC a lot. Can you spell the tetrahydra?
Or like
cannabidiol?
spell your brand's name.
because some of you don't know it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. That one like plagues my mind. It just kind of sits there, and I'm like,
it'd be
man,
so
we never,
easy to
we
set
never
up.
saw it to resolution. But I think just like having someone from Granny's and somebody from Doc Dabs and somebody from, I mean, we could get you betcha everybody could be out here.
Because it would be cool to see them compete, but it would also be cool to see like what does like Superior Molecular think is their best speller.
yeah, like, who's the best speller?
Is
at
it the
Superior?
owner?
Who's your champion?
Is it just like some gummy pad? Like,
Yeah.
who are you putting forward?
Yeah, who's your champion?
Wow, that's
we gotta
good.
get on it now.
That's
We
good.
gotta get
I
on
think
it.
you're dead.
Yeah, you've kind of vocalized it and recorded it.
So
now
if
it's-
you want to compete in the first annual Cannabis Dabbler Spelling Bee, reach out today. We'll put Cayle's email in the show notes.
Yeah,
Shoot him an
yeah.
email.
Hit me up. Let's
Wow,
go.
That's good. Jordan, our Goliath, what have you been smoking about this week? What is your high note?
Well, okay, so I realized a few weeks ago I hadn't laid in a hammock in years. I have a hammock. I haven't used it in years because
Okay.
I have not been. I've been blessed with a home, but with no trees in the yard. I have nothing to hang my hammock from and just relax. So I decided to, a few weeks ago, like put it up in the rafters of my garage, just because that's where I do most of my consumption. And so I was laying in the hammock, smoking a little joint, and it got me thinking. This is a really great place to smoke a joint, but I know I've smoked in like cooler places, so it got me thinking, where are the coolest locations I've ever consumed? Whether that's contextually, like, yeah, it could be Minneapolis, but it's at like a show that I was really excited for, or in my travels around, and I'm like, yeah, hammock is a pretty dope spot, but this hammock is in a garage, and I know I've smoked in cooler places. A hammock's comfy, but there were cooler places, so. The question for you guys in the listening audience is,
Oh.
where do you think is the coolest or your most memorable location of smoking?
That's a really good one.
Mine, I will say, is it was in New Zealand. I was sitting in an outhouse there was no door on this outhouse because there's nobody in front of this outhouse that could have seen you because it was looking out over a mountain, basically. And so I was just taking a morning. I was taking care
You
of
were
business in the
relieving
morning.
yourself.
Yeah.
I had a joint, and I was just looking over this vibrant green and blue mountain range in the North Island of New Zealand, just enjoying the moment.
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, do you guys want to? What's coming to your brain? I think of like a couple cool places, but like, what do you guys?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've had some good ones in Colorado when we got snowed up on top of a mountain, but that was pretty cool because we were at least we were warm. I mean, that one comes immediately to mind. That was a couple years ago. But I don't know. What's yours?
So I have two. Coolest place I think was probably sort of Colorado. I did a decent amount of dabs in Rocky Mountain National Park. Don't come at me, federal office or whatever. But it's cool being able to like look out and be like, man, I'm enjoying the creation of nature while I'm out in nature. And I think that connectiveness I really like. But I think like the coolest situation would be August 1st of last year. First Avenue held like a legalization party. I went out. It was the first time people were like legally consuming cannabis in an area that was protected by police. Like, yeah, you guys go smoke over there. And I saw someone who brought a dab rig and a nail, and I was like, can I do a dab? And they were like, absolutely.
Yeah.
So ripping a dab in the middle of a Minneapolis street while an officer made sure that no minors came towards me. That was a cool experience.
Yeah.
That was a first for me.
Yeah, I would say, now that you mention it, I think, so at Doobie Dabbler, I picked up Doc Dabs right after his Cooking with Clem segment.
Yeah.
Was driving by and then took him back to his booth, and right as we get there, Opie from On Point is starting up the leaf blower.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Nice.
I jumped right under the parachute, and that was pretty cool. So I think that's probably up there. I don't know if
That's a really fun one. Yeah.
For me, I'm from a small island in the Chesapeake Bay of Maryland.
Okay.
And there's a small little tiny, what's technically a national park called Terrapin Park. First time I smoked weed was just on the beach in Terrapin Park, like at night, listening to the waves and all of that. That was pretty cool. But honestly, the coolest like now is like smoking weed because it's not legal in Maryland in like a capacity like it is here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So like smoking weed just anytime I just get to do it and not really worry about anything here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like smoking weed with like Cayle or Jordan or just like this family I've made for myself out here in Minnesota. That's just cool every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think I got so used to it like so quickly, and then was driving through on a road trip to Colorado, and there's like a couple states in between. I don't know if you guys know, and they are not super favorable towards weed.
Yeah.
And there would be times where I'd be like, oh yeah, let me just load up the Puffco real quick, and I'd be like, oh actually, maybe not in South Dakota. I don't
maybe
know
not.
about that one right here.
Yeah.
Did we do it anyways? Maybe.
Allegedly.
Not on the podcast. Wow, I like that. That's a good question. I think put your thoughts in the comments below. Listeners, where have you smoked that was a cool spot? Here in Minnesota or just nationally or anywhere in the world? That's a cool one. Wow.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks for coming on
Yeah, thank
today.
you for
Thanks for
having
being
us.
part of our crew. It's always good to have you guys in the studio, and just feels like we're just hanging out, we're chatting, and then I realize there's cameras in front of us. So
Yeah.
it's, good to be here recording the studio.
Yes.
But for those listening, for those watching on YouTube, we'll be back in your feeds in just about a week. In the meantime, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on LinkedIn, you can find us on Instagram. Any of those social medias, go and give us a follow at Northern Lights Pod, at MN Cannabis College. Come stop by here at the Seed and Sesh. You can catch us doing the podcast or just pick up some cannabis products, some growing equipment. It's a pretty fun place here.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we'll be back in your feeds next week. Until then, have a great rest of your week, guys, and see y'all later. Thanks all. Northern Lights is a Minnesota Cannabis College production. This episode was produced by me, Tanner Barris, and by Steve Eigenman and Jordan Witt. Production assistance from Marcus Harkis, Shayna Payton, and John Barty. Video and audio recording at the Dabbler Depot studio by Jordan Witt. The information provided in this podcast does not, and is not intended to, constitute legal advice, but is instead for general information purposes only. No listener should act solely on the basis of information provided without first seeking advice from their own legal counsel. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Minnesota Cannabis College. Please listen responsibly.